Take a deep breath, dear listener. In through your nose and out slowly, like a quiet sigh. Let your shoulders soften, let your jaw go slack. Let the world outside this moment drift gently away. You're safe now, and nothing is required of you. Except rest. The air is soft around you now. Can you feel it? Cool and kind, like a silk curtain brushing your skin in a quiet breeze. Somewhere in the distance, a low fire crackles. Its glow like the warmth of candlelight behind your eyelids. Now, as your breath becomes slower and your eyelids grow heavier, we begin. Our story today begins in a high stone tower, nestled among the clouds of a forgotten kingdom. There was once a princess named Elira, not the kind you might find in books, with glittering gowns and echoing ballrooms, but a quiet kind of princess. The kind who loved silence and the gentle hush of growing things. Her tower stood at the very edge of the old castle wall, where ivy crept along crumbling stone, and moss softened every step. High above the bustle of the court, Elira tended a secret garden, a garden of poppies. Scarlet, pale gold, dusky rose, even silver-hued ones that shimmered like moonlight. Each poppy grew in its own carved clay pot, hand-painted with lullabies, stacked across the terrace beneath the sky. It was said in that land that poppies could hold dreams, not just bring them but hold them. Their petals like pages, their hearts full of sleep. And Elira believed this. Each night, beneath the hush of stars and the soft lap of wind, she would move barefoot through the garden, her long robe trailing behind her like fog on a river. She would water the poppies one by one, using a carved wooden ladle dipped in rainwater, collected in a pearl-colored bowl. And as she whispered to each flower, their petals would shiver not from cold, but as if they were listening, you see. Long ago, in medieval times, before clocks and chiming bells, many believed sleep was not just for rest, but for receiving messages. Poppies were brewed in warm milk to soothe soldiers after war. They were stitched into pillows, hung above cradles, even tucked into pockets before long journeys. The red petals, like tiny sails, said to carry the sleeper gently across the sea of dreams. And Elira wrote those dreams down. Each morning, before the sun crested over the eastern ridge, she would sit at a stone window, the one that faced the mountains, and open her velvet-bound book, so small it fit into both her palms. With a quill made of raven feather and ink the color of wine, she'd write what the flowers had whispered to her in sleep. Sometimes it was a single sentence. A boy with a silver flute walked across the lake without sinking. Sometimes it was a feeling, a home long forgotten but still warm in the memory. And sometimes they gave her nothing but silence, which she marked with a tiny star in the margin. Each entry felt like a lullaby, a soft thread between the waking world and the one just behind the veil. And every time she turned a page, the scent of pressed petals and candle wax filled the air. No one in the castle knew about her garden. Not the cooks, not the knights, not even the king. Her father, who thought she spent her days embroidering gowns. But in that high tower, where the wind carried only the sound of leaves brushing stone, and where dreams bloomed nightly, Elira had discovered a kind of peace. Not the loud kind, but the kind that settles deep into your bones, like soft wool and warm bread. Some nights, the sky above Elira's tower would swirl with clouds the color of plum velvet. Those were the nights, the poppies whispered the love. She would wrap herself in a shawl woven from goat's wool and nettle thread, and light a single beeswax candle, its flame dancing softly in the breeze. The candle scent was of honey and herbs, and it reminded her of the abbess who once visited the castle, murmuring stories about how monks in the old days would burn sage and lavender to quiet the soul before prayer. And so, Elira would sit, the candle flickering beside her open dream book, listening to the soft rustle of the poppy petals. Did you know? In medieval times, some believed that flowers could dream just like people. That when a flower closed for the night, it entered a world only bees and birds could follow, a kingdom behind the petals, a place where time moved slowly, like melting wax. Elira believed this too, and she began to notice something curious. Each time she had a dream, a vivid one, clear and glowing like stained glass, the poppy she had watered just before sleep would bloom twice as large the next day, its petals velvety and trembling, as if holding something unspoken. One evening, just after the harvest moon, she dreamed of a young boy standing in a silver orchard. The trees shimmered with frost, but the fruit glowed from within, tiny golden pears, warm to the touch. The next morning, her silver poppy had burst wide open, revealing a tiny curl of parchment at its heart. She unfolded it slowly. It read, "Some dreams are meant to be planted." Her heart beat like the wings of a moth. After that, Elira began to speak aloud to her poppy, not just gentle coos or sleepy songs, but questions. "Where do the dreams come from?" she whispered to the crimson one near the window. "What are they trying to tell me?" she asked the pale orange one with its freckled petals. And though the flowers didn't answer in words, they began to lean toward her when she spoke, to bow their heads when she passed. to bloom only after her hands had touched the soil. It felt like trust, a slow, silent trust, the kind that grows with time and tenderness. She started mixing their seeds with powdered moonflower and wild valerian, brewing little sleep drops that she tucked into tiny glass bottles. It was something she read once in an old apothecary book hidden in the castle's forgotten library. Did you know? In 14th century herbals, poppies were often combined with honey and vinegar, then painted onto the temples to ward off nightmares, a medieval guardian against fear. Alira's version was gentler. Hers brought dreams, not of battles or omens, but of soft streams, warm bread, and laughter around a glowing hearth, and sometimes of a woman in a red cloak walking through the woods, leaving no footprints, only blooming poppies in her wake. One night the sky was so clear, you could see every thread of starlight above the tower. The wind was still, and the poppies stood tall and alert, as if waiting. That night Alira didn't dream. Instead, she woke just before dawn to find that every poppy had opened at once, every color, every shape, their petals glistening with dew that smelled faintly of rosemary and smoke. And in the center of the garden, where no pot had ever stood before, was a single bloom unlike the rest. It was made of dark velvet, its petals edged in silver like the embroidery on her mother's old coronation gown. She stepped closer, heart calm but curious, and there, beneath the bloom, was a tiny key. Not brass, not iron, but carved entirely of bone-white glass. Alira cupped the tiny key in her palm, its surface smooth and cool, like river glass washed clean by centuries of quiet water. It shimmered slightly, not in the way metal gleams, but in the way the moonlight sometimes dances on still water, a soft and sleepy glow, pulsing in time with her breath. She'd held it to her ear, and though it made no sound, she felt something, like the low hum of a distant lullaby. Her gaze shifted back to the velvet poppy. Its stem arched gracefully like a swan's neck, and its center, usually dark and still, seemed to glisten with specks of stardust. Alira knelt beside it, the hem of her nightdress brushing the cold stone floor. And in that hush, she remembered a dream she hadn't written down. A door, hidden behind the tapestry of a red lion. A door with no handle, only a single, round keyhole the size of a fingertip. A door inside the castle. Inside the oldest part, the part no one went anymore, and her breath, soft and slow, felt almost like the breeze that passed through her dream. The next morning, she wore her cloak of midnight blue, lined with rabbit fur, and tied at the neck with a carved ivory clasp. The key, now tied to a silk ribbon, rested against her heart. She passed through the halls of the castle like a shadow, her footsteps making no sound. Servants bustled in the kitchens, knights trained in the courtyard, but no one noticed her, not really. That's how it had always been. Princesses who didn't ask for banquets or ballads were easy to overlook, and that suited Alira just fine. She walked down, then further down still, past the old chapel, past the dusty library with its shuttered windows, and down a curling staircase that smelled of salt and ancient stone. Here the air was cooler, filled with the scent of lichen and soot, and there it was, just as in her dream, the tapestry, the red lion embroidered in golden thread, its eyes made of tiny rubies, dulled by time. Alira reached forward with trembling fingers and drew the fabric aside. Behind it, a door, oak darkened by age, wrapped in iron bands, and no handle, only a single, delicate keyhole, just the size of a fingertip. She placed the key gently inside. It turned as if it had been waiting. A soft click, then silence. She hesitated only a moment, then pushed. The door swung open without sound, revealing a room lit by the softest glow. Not candlelight, not fire, but something softer, cooler, like moonlight wrapped in mist. Inside, rows of small, suspended glass spheres floated in midair, each one containing a poppy, perfectly preserved, petals unfurling in slow motion. They rotated gently, as if stirred by breath alone. At the far end of the room stood a table carved from the wood. Upon it a book much like Alira's own velvet journal, only this one was bound in deep green leather, its clasp shaped like a blooming rose. She stepped inside, barely daring to breathe, each heartbeat like a bell echoing through a cathedral of dreams. Did you know, in medieval times, poppy seeds were believed to carry memory, planted not only for beauty, but to honor the dreams of those who had gone before. Some abbeys even had gardens where monks walked in silence, each step marking a prayer, or memory, or whispered story. Perhaps Alira's secret room was once such a place. Perhaps the poppies floating there had names, dreams preserved in time, like pressed flowers between sacred pages. As she reached toward the green book, the glass spheres slowed, as if bowing to her presence. She opened the cover. Inside, there were no words, only delicate drawings of poppies in every stage of bloom, each one accompanied by a symbol, a feather, a wave. Elira stood quietly among the glimmering poppy globes, her fingers resting lightly on the pages of the green dream book. Each turn of a page made the air hum just a little, like the vibration of a harp string played from far away. She noticed something she hadn't before. Along the edges of the book were indentations, soft grooves where something had once rested. Perhaps another key, perhaps something else entirely. She closed the book gently and stepped back, her eyes adjusting to the rhythm of the room. It felt alive here, not like a secret, but like a song waiting to be remembered. And the longer she stood in that glow, the more she realized this room was not for keeping dreams locked away. It was meant for planting them, just like the note had said. Some dreams are meant to be planted. Elira left the chamber quietly, closing the door behind her, but not before taking one thing with her. A single pressed poppy from the inside of the dream book, a crimson bloom so delicate, it fluttered like breath in her hand. Back in her tower, the garden seemed to shimmer under the afternoon sun. Birds coasted on the breeze, and the poppies she'd tended since childhood leaned toward her, their petals heavy with quiet understanding. She took the pressed bloom and buried it in the softest patch of soil she had right beneath the oldest pot, the one with the lullaby painted in sky blue and gold. As she covered it, she whispered something not from a dream, but from her own heart. Grow something forgotten, grow something true. And then she waited. That night, she sat beside the pot with her candle lit, her journal in her lap, and a cup of warm milk steeped with chamomile and poppy seed resting near her hand. The tower was still. The stars outside blinked slowly, as if watching her from centuries away. And somewhere below, an owl hooted, once, twice, then silence. She began to feel heavy, not in a burdensome way, but in that warm, pleasant way one feels just before sleep, like sinking into down-filled blankets or settling into the arms of a dream. And as her eyes began to close, something stirred in the soil. Soft at first, like the tiniest breath beneath the earth. Then, a gentle sound, not unlike the sigh of a page being turned. From the dark soil, a new shoot unfurled, not red, nor silver, nor rose-hued, but a soft, glowing blue, like moonlight made into a petal. It bloomed slowly, its scent of the same color as dawn just before it breaks. Did you know? In old folk tales, blue flowers symbolized longing for peace, for truth, for something lost and unnamed. They were rare in nature, and said to be seen only by those who had made peace with their dreams. Elira smiled in her sleep, unaware of the bloom glowing beside her. Her breath was soft and slow, her hands relaxed around her velvet book. That night she'd dreamed a new dream, a field of poppies, stretching as far as the eye could see, but none of them red, they were all blue. And each one, as she touched it, whispered a name, not hers, nor anyone she knew, but names full of meaning, names like hope and quiet light, and the one who waits. She wandered through them barefoot, the sky above glowing with stars that pulsed like heartbeat lanterns. And when she reached the middle of the field, there stood a door, no walls, no house, just the door. She didn't need a key this time. It opened as she approached. Inside was the sound of pages turning, and wind in the trees, and laughter from long ago. The poppy was still there, blue and soft, its petals heavy with dew. She smiled. She didn't need to write the dream down. Not this time, because it was no longer just a dream. It was becoming, now, dear dreamer, as you breathe in the hush of this moment, as you feel your limbs grow warm and weightless, let the field of poppies drift behind your closed eyes. Let the blue ones call softly to you, and let yourself float through the door into your own dreaming meadow. In the days that followed, Elira no longer needed to search for dreams. They came to her freely, like soft-winged moths to candlelight, not rushed or urgent, but steady, rhythmic. Each evening, just as the sun bowed low beyond the hills, she would step into a garden, and the poppies would open with her. A quiet ceremony, a breath between the worlds. But the blue poppy, the blue one, it grew taller each night, until it stood eye level with her, its petals now the hue of twilight, with veins like silver thread. She noticed that when the wind moved through the garden, the other poppies swayed and danced, but the blue one only bowed, slowly, deliberately, as if in greeting. Elira began to understand something she hadn't before. This bloom was not just born of dreams. It was a gatekeeper of them, a kind of bridge between waking and sleeping, the known and the forgotten. That evening she brought out a new page for her journal, parchment she had made herself from pressed petals and softened bark. She dipped her quill in ink, but, for the first time, did not write a word. Instead, she listened. The rustle of poppy petals, the hush of wind between stones, and the gentle hum beneath everything, a sound like the earth itself breathing. She closed her eyes and let the stillness wrap around her like velvet, and then softly, like the first note of a lullaby, a voice spoke from behind her. Not loud, not frightening, but no one stood there, only the blue poppy. And yet she felt it, the words, the presence, not outside her, but inside, as if the flower had not spoken through air, but through her. It was then she knew she had passed through the threshold of the garden. She was no longer only a dreamer. She She was a dreamkeeper, did you know? In old medieval herb lore, it was believed certain people could hear plants, not with ears, but with their hearts. They were called whisperers, or listeners of the green. They were rare and always gentle, because only the gentle can hear what grows. Elira had become one of them, and in doing so, she began to see stories not only in her sleep, but in the petals of the flowers, the swirls of bark on trees, the rhythm of rain on the stone ledge of her window. One night she placed the blue poppy's petals in a bowl of warm water, infused with honey and a single drop of rose oil. She sipped it slowly, the warmth spreading through her like candlelight on old parchment. Then, curling beside her window, she fell into sleep so deep she did not dream with pictures, but with feelings. She dreamed of a forest where no birds sang, but the leaves whispered every name ever forgotten. She dreamed of a hallway made of sky, and doors that opened with laughter instead of keys. She dreamed of a world beneath the roots of the castle where children played with shadows that told ancient stories in light. And most of all, she dreamed of others who dreamed too, some young, some old, some forgotten entirely by the world above. And each one, as they dreamed, planted something in the dark, a hope, a memory, a wish for someone else. And those dreams, under the soil of silence and time, grew into poppies. When she woke, her face was wet with tears, not from sorrow, but from the gentle beauty of it all. She walked barefoot into her garden, the morning sun not yet risen, and every flower bowed as she passed, not from wind, not from weight, but from recognition. And now, dear listener, you may be feeling a warmth across your shoulders, or a soft heaviness behind your eyes, as if you, too, have wandered that dream field. Let your breath be easy. Let the hush gather around you like a midnight shore. The poppies are listening. The garden is open. You are welcome here. The garden changed after that night, not in any way that the eye could measure. The same pots stood where they always had, the same ivy curled along the stones. But something had shifted, as though the very air knew Elira had stepped across a threshold unseen. The wind was softer, the light hung longer at dusk, and at dawn the dew smelled faintly of rosemary and something older, something like sleep. The poppies no longer simply bloomed, they breathed. They pulsed gently, like the rhythm of waves against a forgotten shore. And now, when she stepped into the garden, Elira could hear something more than whispers. She heard names, not human names, not ones you'd find in ledgers or family trees. These names were things like Still Root, Echo Petal, Mistern, and Woola, the names of dreams, before they were forgotten, the names of stories that never had an ending, of thoughts that had never been spoken aloud. And somehow, they were growing in her garden. She spent hours sitting among them, hands folded in her lap, eyes half closed, simply listening. And sometimes when the wind was just right, she could hear laughter, not from the castle, not from the valley, but from the other side of the vale. Children laughing in dreams, and older voices too, soft voices, telling bedtime stories to those who no longer remembered being young. She knew then she was no longer alone in it. There were other dream keepers, in other towers, in hidden corners of the world, keeping silent gardens, tending the forgotten, nurturing the quiet threads of longing that slept in soil and story alike. One evening, as the light faded to lavender and the stars blinked on one by one, Elira lit her lantern and descended the winding stair, but not to the secret chamber. This time, she went further, beyond the old chapel, beyond the wine cellars, to the ancient stables where no horse had lived in over a century. The floor was cracked stone and moss, and the walls were thick with cobwebs spun, so fine they glowed like frost. At the far end was a wooden trapdoor, half hidden beneath a pile of crumbling straw. She had never seen it open, but she remembered something her nursemaid whispered when she was small. There's a garden under the castle where no sun shines, but all lost things grow. At the time, Elira thought it was a nursery rhyme. Now she wasn't so sure. She pulled the trapdoor open. The air that rose from beneath was cold, but not unpleasant. It carried the scent of earth after rain and something else. Poppies. She descended slowly, ladder rung by rung, her lantern casting golden shadows against the stone. The passage was narrow and round, like a well-dug side. Her breath fogged slightly in the cool air, and her footsteps made no echo, as though the walls were listening. After what seemed like an hour or maybe just a dream's worth of time, she stepped into a cavern lit by pale blue mushrooms. The ceiling arched like the inside of a cathedral, and across the soil-covered floor were poppies, thousands, but not planted in pots. These grew wild, soft and tall and swaying, each one glowing faintly in the dim, enchanted light. They were not her poppies, but they knew her. As she stepped into the garden, they bowed, and in the center of the cavern stood a pool. Not of water, but of light, swirling, shimmering light, like melted moonstone. It pulsed with something ancient, and when Elira knelt beside it, it spoke, not in words, but in pictures. She saw a child lost in sleep, clutching a worn blanket, a soldier far from home, dreaming of warm bread and firelight, a mother humming to a child, long grown. She saw herself, asleep in her tower, holding the velvet book, and she understood this was the source, not of dreams, but of the space dreams came from, the well of the once dreamed. And now, dear soul, as your breath softens and your thoughts float like petals on water, imagine yourself standing with Alira beneath the stone, a garden blooming in the dark, a well that remembers what you've forgotten, and a quiet voice calling you to dream. Alira sat beside the luminous pool, watching the gentle spiral of light curl upward, as if reaching for a sky it remembered from long ago. She dipped her fingers into it, not expecting heat or cold, and instead felt nothing, no sensation, no splash, only stillness. But the moment her fingers touched the surface, the visions grew brighter, and the well responded. It began to hum, softly, low and warm, like the song of a mother cradling her child, like the breath of a lullaby that had never been sung aloud. And then, one by one, the poppies in the cavern began to glow, not just the blue ones, but gold and plum and pale, each petal shimmering from within, as if the well's light had awakened something deep in their roots. Alira stood slowly, lantern forgotten, her body illuminated by the glow around her, and she understood now. This was not just a garden of lost dreams. It was a sanctuary for all that had been felt but never spoken. All the quiet joys, all the tiny griefs, all the wordless wonders that drift through hearts at twilight and vanish like smoke at dawn. They came here, and here they were kept alive. In some ancient abbeys, monks believed that every emotion left an imprint on the air, that love, once spoken, echoed forever in the wind, that longing clung to moss and water, and that hope, if strong enough, could shape the way flowers bloomed along chapel walls. Perhaps that belief had grown into this place. Perhaps Alira herself had helped it bloom without ever knowing. She moved through the underground garden slowly, her hand grazing the petals, each one whispering back a memory not her own, a lullaby in a forgotten language, the warmth of holding a sibling's hand, the joy of rain after a long drought. So many feelings, so soft, so simple, yet never given space to root. Until now, at the far end of the chamber stood an archway made of twisted wood and bone, a natural doorway. Above it, engraved in the arch, were just 3 words: "Sleep is sanctuary." Alira passed beneath it, her breath calm, her heart quiet. Beyond, the chamber opened into something vast, a gentle hill covered in moss, and at its crest a single chair, carved from stone but draped in velvet and lined with poppy vines, a throne but not for ruling. It faced a mural, painted on the far wall, so large it stretched from floor to ceiling. It showed the castle, her tower, the poppy garden, but also something else, a great tree, its roots stretching beneath the castle, beneath the earth, into the well of the once dreamed, and its branches, made entirely of stars, reaching into a night sky that shimmered with silver constellations. Each blossom on the tree was a poppy, each poppy a dream, and in its heart was Alira herself, not a princess, not a child, but a keeper, a guardian of sleep, a quiet weaver of peace. She sat in the stone chair, her velvet book in her lap, and the petals of the dream tree seemed to shift in the painting, softly fluttering, as if stirred by her presence. No words needed to be spoken, no instruction needed to be given. She simply rested, and in her stillness, the poppies outside, in the real world, began to bloom all at once. Villagers awoke with soft smiles, children slept deeper, elders dreamed again for the first time in years. The castle itself seemed quieter, wrapped in a hush that felt like kindness. Alira dreamed in that chair, but not the way she had before. She dreamed with purpose. She called to the old dreams, the forgotten ones, and asked them to bloom again, not to haunt, not to ache, but to rest. And one by one they came to her, soft as petals, light as feathers, ready at last to sleep. Now, gentle dreamer, as you breathe in this stillness, you might imagine your own forgotten wishes, gathered in the hush of your heart, waiting, not to be chased, but to be honored. You are not alone. Alira's garden welcomes all sleepers, and tonight, you are part of it.